The decline of child marriage in Nigeria. With rates of child marriage declining, aid groups work with rural communities to continue the trend.
Nigeria and Poland signed a memorandum of understanding on agriculture. Poland promises to strengthen economic relations with Nigeria, addressing the food crisis and energy security.
A forgotten era of black filming. The Academy Museum of Motion Pictures explores a vibrant history in an exhibition called Regeneration Black Cinema 1898 to 1971.
Hello and thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Osoa, Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Vincent Makori from Voice of America in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, I'm Vincent Makori at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Chamberlain Osoa in Lagos brings you that story.
President Muhammadu Buhari has signed a memorandum of understanding on agriculture with Poland to address the food security crisis in the country and the African continent. The Polish president, Andrzej Duda, who is on a two-day official visit to Nigeria, has promised to strengthen economic relations with Nigeria, not only towards addressing the food crisis, but energy security. Both leaders also discussed the supply of liquefied natural gas and oil to Poland and the European Union. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Umozike, tells us more.
President Andrzej Duda is the first Polish head of state to embark on an official visit to Nigeria in the last 60 years. Received by President Muhammadu Buhari at the forecourt of the presidential villa, the Polish president, who is on a two-day visit, is warmly welcomed with a 21-gun salute before proceeding into a closed-door meeting. During the strategic meeting between the two leaders, which included dialogue between business leaders of the two countries, food and energy security was central as a memorandum of understanding on agriculture is signed to advance economic cooperation. After the hour-long meeting, President Buhari, who led the Polish president to a joint media conference, acknowledges the existing cooperation with Poland in the areas of defense, agriculture, maritime and education.
I wish to see this opportunity to commend the efforts of the government of Poland for the assistance provided to the large number of refugees fleeing the conflict in Ukraine, which included a significant number of Nigerians. Our cooperation in education has a long history, and we wish to encourage the extension of that cooperation to the sharing of knowledge and experience between our educational institutions in areas such as science and technology. As regards trade relations, we would like to see an increase in the level of trade, as it remains relatively low in spite of the long period of relations between our two countries.
In recent years, the Polish president, through an interpreter, states that Poland has taken delivery of LNG gas from Nigeria to Poland, and in the aftermath of the Russian war on Ukraine, which he describes as unjustified, Poland would like to ramp up gas supplies from Nigeria.
I
also want to add that the first supplies of the LNG gas to our LNG gas terminal in Świnoujście from Nigeria have already happened, just like the import of crude oil performed by our oil company Lotos. Those shipments did happen in recent years, and that bodes well for the future because we do want to further develop this cooperation. We want to increase the supplies from Nigeria to Poland, and by this way we also want to contribute to the development of economic relations between both our countries.
At a later date, the two leaders indicate plans to further consolidate relations in the areas of defense through an MoU, as the Polish president hopes that the conversations will yield speedy and fruitful outcomes as it deepens investment in the country. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Joining us to discuss this is an agric-economist and chairman, Southeast Farms and Agriculture Processing Company Limited, Dr. Nnemeka Obiayeri. Glad to have you on Africa 54.
Thanks for having me, Chamberlain.
All right, so tell us, what do you make of this MoU on agriculture by both countries?
It's a very good thing, and but to me, I don't believe, and I don't think that we needed to sign MoU with any country for Nigeria to diversify our economy towards agro and agro-processing base. Prior to 1966, if you look at our physical economy between 1959 to 1960, you will discover that the economy of Nigeria then, before the advent of the crude oil, was powered mostly by non-oil resources. We had the granite pyramid of the north and the cotton of the north. We had the cocoa of the west. We have the palm oil value chain of the south belt. And of course, in 1964 to 65, Nigeria controlled almost about 45% of the global crude palm oil market. That market today is sized at over $100 billion, which simply means if we had maintained our market share within those periods without taking our eyes off the ball, by now we'll have been exporting nothing less than $38 to $40 billion worth of palm oil value chain, which Indonesia and Malaysia control 85%. It's a good development.
Okay, so tell us then, I mean, we understand both leaders have indicated plans to further consolidate relations in the area of defense. How do you see this playing out?
And any country that can support us in the issue of security, in the issue of protecting our sovereign integrity is welcomed. You know, there is nothing wrong in us expanding our outlook, looking at areas where we can get support and help.
Now, let's talk about energy security. The Polish president has promised support to Nigeria. How feasible do you see this, considering the present war between Russia and Ukraine?
To be very honest, Nigeria has everything within our environment to be energy self-sufficient. In fact, it's the other way around. Poland should actually be depending on Nigeria for energy supplies. For example, now, one of the greatest problems that is facing the West today is the issue of gas disruptions from the Nord Stream 1 and the 2 from Russia, because today, most part of Europe are dependent upon gas supply, energy supply from Russia. So the war between Ukraine and Russia is actually using the energy supply to Europe as part of their bargaining strategy to make sure that they cripple Europe. So Nigeria stands in a better position to fill the gap as much as we can. You know that the NNPC, in partnership with other countries, are trying to do gas pipelines, both the west and the east, the one that goes through the coast to Morocco and the one that passes through Algeria. If we can go into partnership with most of our African nation partners and then Europe, we can actually provide alternative routes. If you look at the length of the Nord Stream 1 and 2, compared coming from Nigeria, you try to discover that it's actually better to move from Nigeria. And interestingly, there are mistakes people make. Nigeria is actually more of a gas nation than a fossil fuel nation. We have more gas reserve than fossil fuel reserve. Our fossil fuel reserve is about 36 billion barrels of crude oil, which will last 30-40 years max, and it's not even green friendly. So we have everything here that can make us energy self-sufficient. Even coal that we run away from. 40% of the industrial machines in China are powered by coal. I don't know why we run away from it, because of the policy of the West and their climate energy wars. So we need to look inward. We can be gas self-sufficient. We can refine everything we produce here in Nigeria. We can even have enough, most of the problem we have here is our centralized nature of governance. If we can, that's why we beg those in power, National Assembly, the presidency, the governors, to work together. The best years of Nigeria was between 1960 to 1966. We had physical autonomy of the regions. 50% of resources were produced resources were produced internally, were kept within the regions. We should be looking inward. We have the potentials to become one of the top 10 economies in the whole world within the next 10 years if we get our constitutional and physical framework right.
All right, Dr. Nnameka Obiariri, thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Chamberlain.
Want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered? Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54 and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. After the break, looking behind the violence in Ethiopia's other conflict, an attack on the capital by the Oromo Liberation Army raises fears of more civil war spreading. Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. In Ethiopia's Gambela region, a drone attack on the capital by the rebel group, the Oromo Liberation Army, has raised fears of more civil war spreading in the country. Reporter Henry Wilkins spoke to local officials and analysts about what's behind the violence and what it could mean for Ethiopia's security.
In Gambela City, security has been beefed up since June when rebel groups carried out a surprise attack here that reportedly killed as many as 37 people. Since then, local police have started working with troops sent here by federal government to protect against the rebel groups, the Oromo Liberation Army, OLA, and Gambela Liberation Front, GLF.
The shooting began around 6 a.m. We weren't expecting it, so we weren't well prepared. OLA and the GLF entered the city as far as the regional council building. They entered the city from 3 directions. I think the Gambela Liberation Front was leading the OLA.
Analysts say it is the first time the Oromo conflict, a decades-old fight between local and federal forces and ethnic Oromo rebels, has reached the Gambela city. Less than a week later in the Oromia region, around 400 ethnic Amharas were killed by OLA militants. The rapid uptick in violence has some questioning if the conflict in Ethiopia now constitutes a second civil war. Data shows the number of deaths linked to the OLA increased 481% between August of 2021 to July of 2022 to 3,784 deaths, up from 651 deaths during the same period the previous year. Analysts say the increased violence is the result of long-standing grievances related to Oromo self-determination and lack of political representation in Ethiopia's federal system, especially since the current government came to power in 2018.
And then since then, I think that added fuel to the Oromo Liberation Army insurgency. So after the failure to reintegrate those fighters.
But one other civil servant who witnessed the fighting says rumours abound that the OLA may return. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Gambela, Ethiopia.
A leading contemporary art exhibition, South Africa's FNB Art Joburg Fair, featuring artists from across the African continent, is back in full swing after a 2-year pause due to the coronavirus pandemic. Among the participants is a South African artist, Blessing Ngobeni, who picked his first brush during his 9-year stint in prison.
South African artist Blessing Ngobeni first picked up a paintbrush during a 9-year stint in prison, drawing fellow inmates and birthday cards to kill time. At his downtown Joburg studio, Ngobeni mixes paint that he'll use for his next body of work to be exhibited in London next year.
I was sentenced to 9 years in prison, and then I stayed in prison for those years. Then that's where I discovered that, there's something. And though it was more of like killing of time, it wasn't like something that I was sure of. I was like, let me just push my time and kill the time by drawing other inmates' portraits and designing birthday cards and writing messages.
The 35-year-old showcased his work at South Africa's FNB Art Joburg Fair. His latest body of work, titled Spirit of Water Dancing, was displayed in front of colorful canvases with a painted set of antique armchairs and sofas, inspired by an eerie discovery in 2016 of a chair in North Georgia allegedly stuffed with the hair of black slaves.
I recreated the same story using the same coaches, printed my work in these coaches and stuff. stuff in things that are very secretive to the people. But what I looked at also there, the beauty of these things that we have, these things that we own, lies a secret, lies DNA, lies memories, lies pain of the other people.
Nigerian art curator and founder of Pacers Gallery in Lagos, Wunika Muken, who was also exhibiting at the fair, told news agencies that the diversity of African art was inspiring to see.
There's a lot of figurative art that's going on in West Africa, so a lot of artists are making works with, black faces, black portraiture, black poses, and so coming here and seeing a lot of, abstract works and sculptures has also been very refreshing.
The fair also had other famed artists who showcased their work and various initiatives across the city, such as Open Art, a program focusing on public art and installations in unexpected areas.
It is time now for a short break, and as we do, we remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, the Red Cross introduces a cash transfer plan to help Somali families impacted by severe drought and inflation.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Vincent McCory in Washington. The United Nations Children Fund, or UNICEF, says the percentage of Nigeria's children married before age 18 has fallen from 44% to 30%. As Nigeria still has one of Africa's highest rates of child marriage, 8 groups are working with rural communities to address the issue. Timothy Obiezu reports from Benue, Nigeria.
Serving meals and cleaning. These are some of the new responsibilities for 14-year-old Dorsey Merga, the youngest wife in this clan in central Benue State. She moved in with her then 17-year-old husband in December and is now 5 months pregnant. Her husband's family says the marriage was consensual and that the older women in the family are helping her adapt. But as a married girl, Merga cannot use a scholarship to attend school for free.
I'm actually not happy because I don't know what to do. My husband has agreed that I can go back to school, but with conditions that I go from here as his wife.
Merga and other girls in the community received a scholarship from a non-profit started by Nigerian crypto investor Janet Katio. Katio started the non-profit in memory of her late father, who promoted education for girls in the village. Katio was shocked to learn that Merga had married and had not been to school for months.
My case is a lost battle. It's so unfortunate.
Katio says child marriage is a key concern and why her non-profit is focused on educating the girls.
Most of the age parents are not educated. So once a girl gets to a certain age, they feel this child should be married, and also not just married, so that they can also get something to feed on that girl child. People, even when we were growing and when my father was training us, people were like, what the heck are you doing? These girls are already ripe for marriage.
UNICEF says Nigeria has the second highest number of children married before the age of 18, behind India. Officials say illiteracy, poverty, and local traditions are the major factors driving child marriage in the country. Nigerian authorities and UNICEF recently conducted a survey. The survey found that between 2016 and last year, child marriage declined by nearly a third, from 44% of all children to 30%. But UNICEF Country Director Peter Hawkins says because Nigeria has a growing population, the total number of married children continues to rise.
The population is so enormous that a percentage increase, or reduction in the case of child marriage, is a good thing. But the number of girls coming into that category has increased exponentially. So the national figure disguises regional disparities.
UNICEF says unless the trend changes, some 29 million Nigerian girls will be child brides by the year 2050. Katio and her team will continue trying to discourage child marriage in Nigeria, despite knowing that some girls, like Mega, remain bound by tradition and economic hardship. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Benue State, Nigeria.
The International Red Cross Society, the ICRC, has introduced a cash transfer plan to help families displaced by severe drought and inflation in Somalia cope with life realities. About 150,000 families have benefited from the emergency relief, the first in a series of monthly payments to support the people.
Thanks to the International Committee of the Red Cross, about 150,000 families have already benefited from the mobile phone-based cash assistance plan. Each family was given $90 to cover the cost of food or other basic items through the program run by the ICRC. When Nadir Ahmed Adan received the grant, he says he used $50 to open a small shop and the rest to buy food for the family.
I left Bako region after losing my livestock because of the drought. The rains fell for 3 years, so the animals all died.
The drought has lasted for 4 consecutive rainy seasons, and its economic impact on the vulnerable communities is aggravated by the protracted armed conflict and rising food and fuel prices. Cash assistance aims to help the most vulnerable survive and to minimize their debt.
I transport from Bako to Belewene on credit. I paid back my debt to the driver after receiving money from ICRC.
With the next rainfall due in October, rural families stripped of their livelihoods continue to flee to towns, hoping to receive help from relatives and aid groups. To help people build resilience in the face of the worsening impact of climate shocks, agricultural cooperatives are being supported with drought-resistant seeds, farming tools, training and cash for fuel needed to irrigate.
We do this to keep the farming business going, despite the drought.
The ICRC is distributing cash assistance to people in conflict-affected parts of Somalia, as well as rehabilitating boreholes and wells. The agency also supports primary health care services.
African Americans have been involved in filmmaking since the early days of the movie industry. A new exhibition at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures explores that vibrant history, much of it forgotten. Mike O'Sullivan reports from Los Angeles.
A classic film clip from 1898 shows a black couple kissing. Rediscovered just 5 years ago, it's shown with other early film clips, part of the exhibition Regeneration, Black Cinema, 1898 to 1971, at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures, a comprehensive film museum that opened last year. And this exhibition tells an important story, say museum officials.
We really wanted to take the time and the space to show people just how long black artists have been involved in filmmaking.
Looking at black entertainers and filmmakers who faced discrimination in Hollywood, but were part of a major alternative industry that produced
independent film productions, primarily for an African American audience by in large part African American filmmakers.
On display are scripts from early films, costumes from Stormy Weather, the 1943 musical with Lena Horne, and Porgy and Bess from 1959, starring Sammy Davis Jr., and poster after poster of feature films.
And many of them have been lost to time, but we have these posters as wonderful reminders of this really robust period of film production.
Most films were shot on a low budget in many different genres.
We have cowboy films, we have adventure films, we have dramas.
Including the 1939 film Reform School with Louise Beavers, who appeared in more than 100 films and on television. These movies were made across the United States, drawing on a national pool of talent. Also on display, soundies from the 1940s, short films projected inside movie jukeboxes that showcased black musicians and dancers. Some black performers, like the Nicholas Brothers, were well known on the musical stage. Paul Robeson, a concert artist, became an imposing figure on the Hollywood big screen. By the 1960s, more films were exploring racial issues, with Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier among others. Poitier won an Oscar for Best Actor for the 1963 film Lilies of the Field, among the many stories recounted here. Mike O'Sullivan, VOA News, Los Angeles.
Well, that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word from Lagos.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I am Chamberlain Oso. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.